when you're a kid, when you're starting out, you think, oh, if I could just get a manager, if I can get a label, they can like create some traction for me, or they'll get me into play Carnegie Hall. But it's like, you're not going to be playing Carnegie Hall if you can't sell Carnegie Hall.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so,
Exactly.
like,
Yeah.
that's the thing I have to keep reminding myself is like, it's my job to create the traction. Like, I am the CEO, I am the artist. It's my job to make this happen, and everyone else is going to come alongside me and support. But I can't reasonably expect them to like create any super value for me that I'm not going to create myself.
What's going on? Welcome to the New Music Business. I'm your host, Ari Herstand, author of How to Make It in the New Music Business. The book, 3rd edition, is out now everywhere. Audiobook, ebook, hardcover, however you like to consume books, you can find the book. Today, my guest is Cody Fry.
And I heard I can see you now. I'll find my way underground.
He's an incredible artist, multi-instrumentalist, arranger. He plays guitar, piano, but most impressively to me, he arranges full orchestral pieces for his own music. He does arrangements for other songs, and he's twice nominated for a Grammy for his arranging. He's nominated for the Grammys this year for arranging his version of Sound of Silence, and he was previously nominated for a Grammy for arranging Eleanor Rigby. Incredible arrangements, fantastic music, great singer as well. To top it all off, he has a fantastic voice. He's kind of found this niche now, fronting orchestras. He's playing the Walt Disney Concert Hall with the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra. He has also played the Kennedy Center a few times. He's played all over the world, fronting these orchestras in front of thousands of people with his own original music. And he arranges all of the parts for the orchestra as well. So he just shows up and they play his music. He fronts it, he sings, he plays. It's really cool. You could check out his stuff on YouTube, watch these videos as well. He has hundreds of millions of streams as well. He went viral in 2021 on TikTok for some of his orchestral arrangements for his songs. And then he got a major record deal. And we talk all about that whole experience. 5 years after he released the song, it actually caught on TikTok. He talks about that experience. He talks about working with a major record label, and now he's totally independent. He talks about why he signed, what the deal was. We kind of get into the weeds of the deal. And then he talks about why he went independent and how he's structuring his business now. We really get into the weeds of that. If you're into orchestral arrangements, scoring, all of that stuff, we talk a little bit about that. I have a little bit of experience there, so we geeked out for a second. And then towards the end, he actually had a lot of questions for me. He kind of turned the proverbial microphone around and asked me some questions kind of about the state of the industry and how record labels function. There was a great question that he asked was, where does he think the biggest value add in the music industry is? And so we talk about that, and I gave him my thoughts on that. So stick around to the very end so you can hear about that. But Cody's an incredible artist. Find him, Cody Fry, wherever you find music. Specifically, watch some of his full videos on YouTube, namely the score videos are super cool. We talk about that for a little while. And then you can find his music wherever you listen to music. All of that stuff, find him on the socials, everywhere like that. You can find all of us that make the show happen at Ari's Take on the socials. Find me at Ari Herstand on Instagram. Visit aristake.com. Get on the email list. That's where you're going to get the most up-to-date relevant information. That's the best way to connect with us. aristake.com. Get on the email list. But right now, if you wouldn't mind, hit pause. Leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Leave us a comment on Spotify. Did you know that you can leave comments on Spotify now? Leave us a comment if you're listening there or on YouTube. Leave us a comment, give it the thumbs up, subscribe, follow, all that stuff. If you want us to keep doing this, show up in your feed. All right, let's kick into the show. Cody Fry, welcome to the show.
All right, it's great to be here. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
All right, I love to hear it. Sweet, thank you. So I first have to start off by asking, what is your fascination with French horns?
Oh, Starting off with a bang, I see. They're just the most majestic of instruments. I feel like, for me, I love film scoring. I love orchestration, obviously. But in film music, it just feels like all the best moments are French horns.
The climax always comes when that French horn just plays the one note, just powers through.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
okay.
I just developed an emotional affiliation for it when I was a kid.
But you never played.
I've never played French horn, would probably be quite bad at it. But yeah.
I think I saw a video, like a short of you playing through some tube that sounded like a French horn. I don't know what that machine was, but what is that?
My breath controller. This is
breath controller. That's wild. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
They're kind of an old invention, but basically you put your mouth on it and then blow into it, and it acts as if it takes the MIDI information from your breath and uses that as like expression data.
So, that's wild.
Yeah, it's really fun. It makes you feel less like a programmer and more like a musician.
Yeah. Because I'm curious, when you're scoring, what is your setup? I started watching one of your 30-minute videos of explaining how you created Sound of Silence, which was really cool. And I love to hear that. And I'm just curious, like, are you using primarily MIDI, like Spitfire, like sounds or something like that? And then, or do you always bring in an orchestra? Give me your process for a lot of your recordings.
So
and arrangements,
everything always kind of starts with the song. Obviously, I ask the song what it wants to be, and then try to go from there. But I think on the orchestration side, I'm usually writing simultaneously in a notation software program. It used to be Finale, RIP. Now I'm on Dorico, which I love.
Wait. Hold on. What happened to Finale? I'm behind the times.
Oh, dear, yes. Make Music decided to get rid of Finale. So Finale is no longer being supported. It will still run on computers, but once the next update for Mac or whatever hits, Finale will no longer operate.
Oh, I'm so sorry. What did you move to?
I moved to Dorico, which is a newer application by Steinberg. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but truly, it is so much better. I honestly can't believe I used Finale for so long.
Have you ever tried Sibelius?
No. I feel like for me, I didn't want to go something that was basically like a different version of Finale. I feel like that would kind of just screw with my mind. Dorico operates much differently, and so it was kind of like learning a new thing rather than trying to unlearn a bunch of old things, if that makes sense.
Got it.
Because Finale and Sibelius were basically the same program. Right.
Except Sibelius had like the jazz font that by default or whatever. So this, what's the new program called? Dorico?
Dorico. It's by Steinberg, which makes Cubase, I think. It's a big dog.
And what makes it so different from Finale? How does it function now? That's so different.
It was made in the current millennium. For modern computers.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I find it to be quite fast. There's just a bunch of amazing features. I don't know. I don't want to get too in the weeds about it because probably most of your listeners are not.
I'm fascinated. I've done a little bit of scoring. I was a music major for a year studying classical trumpet. And then, I scored all the horn parts for my funk project and in Sibelius. And I'm by no means a pro, but I'm fascinated by it all. So getting back to your process though, step me through your process of how it all works when you put
normally
together.
In notation software, and then like on the other screen is usually my DAW, which is Logic. That's how I do MIDI programming. And so I'm kind of like, lots of times I'm roughing things in Logic, and then I'll go into notation software and kind of make it official, kind of. So, because I always record real orchestra. That's kind of the whole point for me. That's the fun part. Those are the days of my job that are the best days. And so, I'm always thinking about like, okay, how is this going to sound with a real ensemble? I'm not trying to stick to MIDI instruments.
Yep. And all of your recordings, are they all real orchestras? Because I saw in that video, you're like, oh, well, that's me playing the percussion on this in MIDI.
Yes. Okay. So I should stipulate. Yeah. I generally record real strings, woodwinds, and brass. A lot of times I will record the percussion myself. I think percussion is one of those weird kind of specific instruments that honestly is a lot of times easier to get right with samples because you can scroll through sounds, you can get the exact snare drum you want, that sort of thing. And so I find that a lot of the percussion on my projects is sampled, although not all of it. So
Okay, gotcha. Interesting. So I mean, orchestras are expensive. Musicians are expensive.
oh
I
man,
know, you know.
I know.
And so were you doing this like from your earliest records from 10, 12 years ago before, you know, you found a bit of success and you know, had your record deal and all of that? You were still hiring all of these musicians and all of that for your
Oh
records, or?
no, I mean I think my first like actual project came out in like 2010 or something. I can't remember the exact
Yeah.
year. I'd have to look it up, but I did not hire an orchestra for that. I produced that all in
Okay.
my bedroom. It
Gotcha.
wasn't until my 2016 record Flying that I thought to
Mm-hmm.
myself, hey, I love songwriting. And I was kind of being like cool folk songwriter guy for a while
Yep.
because I thought
Yep.
maybe that is what people will like.
Yeah.
I finally, in around that time in 2016, I was like, okay, I love songwriting, I love pop music, but I also love this film stuff and the orchestra. What would happen if I just combined those things?
Yeah.
And that at that time, I had kind of established myself also as like a producer with some great artists in Nashville, and then was making money doing like film and TV stuff on the side. And so
Mm.
I kind of was taking all of that money and then reinvesting it into my artist project. And that's
Yeah.
kind of how I got the money to hire an orchestra. And I should be clear, for Flying, it was basically as cost effective as you could possibly be. I think we had maybe 12 string players total, so it wasn't a full orchestra. We had 2 French horns, a couple of trombones, a tuba, 1 flute, and 1 clarinet. So it was really like a small ensemble. And then we doubled stuff. So I would have the strings track 3 times, and the flute would play the flute 1 part on the first pass and the flute 2 part on the second pass, you know. And so it was really cost effective. We got through 17 tunes in 6 hours with that ensemble. So it was
Holy shit.
it's expensive, especially for me. It was like my life savings at that point, basically.
Sure.
But it was also super cost effective. We got a lot of material out of that session.
I'm assuming you're classically trained. Did you go to school for music? You learned all of that because, you know, I mean, you're conducting a lot of these orchestras and in a lot of these sessions.
Yeah. Well, I'm lucky. I had a father who was in music. He's an orchestral arranger as well. So it's kind of in my blood a little bit.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, I did go to school for music. I went to Belmont here in Nashville. And I wouldn't say I'm classically trained. I would say I'm musically trained. I cannot play classical music.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your first? Piano. I'm assuming is your first instrument.
Piano's the first instrument. I play guitar as well.
Right.
I toured for a lot with other people as a guitarist and pianist. Toured with Ben Rector and a bunch of other artists in town. But really, piano and guitar are the only 2 things I would say I play at a professional level.
Right. So I'm curious. You know, you were a kind of a working musician, producer, arranger in Nashville, experimenting with different genres, doing various productions, doing scoring for, you know, film, TV stuff. How did you find your sound? How did you decide, like, okay, as an artist, this is who I am, this is the way I want to go? And I want to preface that a little bit more because, like, you know, I first heard about you through Corey Wong, our mutual friend. And, like, I saw Corey. You do some of his stuff. Yeah, Corey's amazing. And, you know, but he is full in the funk realm. Like, you know, Corey, you think of Corey Wong and you know, you think of just like just straight ahead funk with horns and like his you know, his right hand just going hard. But like, you know, and I watched a bunch of the videos that you guys did together and you do that. But when I think of Cody Fry now, that doesn't even enter my mind of who you are as an artist, or like that is like totally outside the umbrella of what I think anyone would think of now as like who Cody Fry is and what your sound is. So tell me about this evolution of your artist sound over the years.
Yeah. I love this question. I feel like this gets kind of at the heart of like what artists are supposed to do, which is just like figure out who I am and what I have to say that's unique from someone else. And I think that's kind of like the goal for me as an artist. And I think kind of for everybody, because like if you're spending your time trying to be Ariana Grande or something, like we already have Ariana Grande. So
Right.
if people want that, they're just going to go to the actual thing. And so you have to take the time within yourself to figure out like, okay, like who am I? What are the things I like? How do I turn that into my sound? And how can I make sure that it's like unique to me?
Yeah.
And I think that is a long process. At least it was for me. Some people like get it immediately. For
Sure.
me, it took a long time. I think part of that is because I come from a background of musical training, which is like client driven. So a lot of my work that I was doing through college and post college was like, okay, I got a client that needs a track that's in a bossa style. And so I have to like figure out, okay, how do we create the bossa thing? And so I was doing a lot of like for hire music. And I think that makes it a little more difficult to find your sound because you're finding someone else's sound all the time.
Yes.
So I think for me, kind of the big aha moment was that thing I mentioned earlier about, hey, what if I combined these things that I love? And I think that's kind of how most artists find their sound, if I would hazard a guess, which is like, okay, I love songwriting, I love pop music, I love funk, all that, but I also love this like weird cinematic film stuff, and
Yeah.
I don't see that music being created in the way that I wanted it to be created. And I think like that's another thing where when you're looking at the music landscape and you don't hear the music that you want to hear, like that's the calling for you to step in and make that thing. And so for me, that was another aha moment, which is like, oh, I don't hear music that's like, that feels the way I want it to feel with this stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like
Cool.
a lot of the best artists, like that's how I feel when I listen to them. It's like, oh, they're answering that question I didn't even know I had.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, definitely. So was Flying kind of when you came out with that, or were you putting that together, you felt the most grounded in
Yeah.
understanding of who you are and want to be and what your sound is and
Yeah.
will be?
Most
At least in that
definitely. I feel
moment?
like after
Yeah.
I made Flying, I just felt, hey, this was something that I feel like only I could do. Like it was just a unique confluence of like the things that make me excited and the music I write and the things that I wanted to do. And so it was the first time that I felt like it was really me on a record.
Yeah. So let's talk about I Hear Symphony, the final track on Flying. The record comes out in 2017-ish, right? 2016, 2017. And then 5 years later, this song goes crazy viral on TikTok. Tell me
Yes.
about this journey of that.
Yeah. I mean, like you mentioned, I Hear Symphony was the last track on the record.
Yeah.
It was kind of one of those that was just for me. Like, I thought this was kind of a weird song with no chorus and 3 verses and weird orchestral interludes.
Yeah.
I thought it was a cool artistic statement, and I really loved it, but I wasn't expecting, I certainly didn't place it on the album to be like, here's the single, guys.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and again, 5 years went by with kind of, not nothing, but most of my success prior to that had been my more poppier songs. Like there's a tune called Go off of Flying, which is just kind of like a fun pop upbeat song about going places. And that was like doing well for me, at least at the time, what I thought was well. And so just totally out of left field, obviously, you've told this story probably dozens of times on this podcast, which is just TikTok stepped in and said, okay, we'll take it from here.
Yeah. Right.
I think the unique thing for me is that I didn't have an account. There was no like mastermind promotional strategy. I just woke up one day and saw the streaming numbers start to tick up and up and up and up and had no idea what was going on. My brother-in-law showed me how to use TikTok because he was like, hey, I heard your song on TikTok.
Wow. That's
so
wild.
He told me about the app and I got on there and was just totally blown away. So I wish I could take
And you don't
credit
know how
for-
that you don't know how like who was the first person to put the song up or how this happened at all and why this song and why that clip and all of that?
I really don't know. I think my best guess is that some K-pop artists put it on a playlist of theirs, which then seeded it in a really intense fan community. And then it also got seeded in the anime community, which is another very intense fan base. And so a
Interesting.
lot of the first videos using the song were like anime supercuts or whatever they call them, edits. So I think that was kind of like what started it. But it went so back in that time, it was like when things were going viral, they just fed themselves. It was like it was viral because it was viral.
Yeah. I mean, this reminds me of we had Ricky Montgomery on the show, and his he had a couple songs go viral right around the same time, and similarly was not on the platform. Didn't really know. He was kind of had some music in the gamer community, thought it might have been that, but didn't, also not on the platform. So now this is like kind of the heyday of artists being quote unquote discovered on TikTok or whatever. At least the labels, lapping up any song and artist that they possibly could. So you ended up signing with a major record label. Talk about Decca Records. I'm under Universal UMG.
Yeah.
Tell me about that experience.
Man, it was wild. And I'm glad you brought up Ricky because that was when I first started listening to your podcast, was when labels started approaching me. I thought surely like someone else is writing about this, or maybe there's like an artist I can connect with and talk with them about how they dealt with this, what sort of deal they got. And so I listened to that whole episode with Ricky.
Hell yeah.
And it was just so insightful and helpful to me because it was like, I was listening to him talk and I was like, oh my gosh, this is literally exactly what I'm going through. And it was so good. And we ended up connecting on the phone and stuff. And so like I got to talk with him and like he gave me some inside info about like his deals and like what to look out for and all this. And it was just so helpful. And that was kind of my entrance into the new music business podcast.
That's so cool.
So helpful.
I love to hear that. Can I, a quick aside about that episode in particular, Warner's PR team tried to shut that episode down because Ricky like Ricky is literally giving away all of the secrets that you're not supposed to give away to artists, and Warner was giving him like such a favorable deal because they like wanted him so bad.
I know.
But they like no, and it was literally blowing my mind in the moment because I'd never heard of these type of record deals structured in this way in the history of the music industry.
Yeah.
And I made him repeat it so many times. I'm like, this has got to be wrong. This is, and a Warner PR person was on the episode, like in the background listening the whole time, sends me a list afterwards of all the moments that they wanted cut.
Oh my gosh. I
just like ignored them. And then like I was like, I'm not cutting shit. And I asked Ricky, I like checked it by him, like, yo, are you cool if we keep it? He's like, yeah, let the chips fall where they may, whatever. And so we put the episode up, and that morning my phone was ringing off the hook, endless emails, or you have to take this down. I'm like, fuck you, I don't have to do anything. This is like, it was on the record. Like, I can do whatever I want. You don't control me, whatever. So I thought that was pretty funny, but like, I'm glad that he was, you guys were able to connect over that, and you got some pointers from that. That's great
information reached me at the best possible time. And I'm so glad that you kept it all in, because it was such a gold mine, like, of info, of insight, because you never get that stuff. And like, I remember when labels were approaching me, like, I have whatever, all you need to know about the music business, the newest updated version, and I'm reading it and I look at the index and there's not a single mention of TikTok. And I'm just like, this is the whole music industry now. And this book called All You Need to, it wasn't even in there. And so I didn't know who to go to for advice. And like, obviously my lawyer was knowledgeable, but like these deals were happening so quickly and so differently than in the past. It was, you couldn't keep up. And so, oh man, Ricky, he really threw me a bone. It was awesome.
So tell me about your deal. Tell me about, how that helped, or at least how you structured your deal with Decca and like just that whole experience.
I'd probably back up. When it first started going viral, I think I spoke with like 14 or 15 labels like in 2 weeks. Sure. Like everybody was just like, hey, what's up? Can we have your money? And like, there was, I think, 2 labels where I thought, okay, maybe this could work, and got deal offers from them. And they were both just so dismal. I basically just said no and moved on. And then, so I Hear Symphony went viral. I was dealing with this label stuff. And then when I finally said no to this label stuff, I thought, I need to get more music out. And that's when I pulled the trigger on Symphony Sessions, which is like this kind of double down of like, okay, I'm going to get in the studio live with the orchestra, track a little EP, get some new music out immediately. And that had my cover of Eleanor.
Which was,
and filmed it all for content, obviously.
Right.
That had my cover of Eleanor Rigby on it, which also ended up going viral and being nominated for a Grammy. And all this time, I had still kind of been keeping in contact with Decca, Verve, Universal, because I really enjoyed they were the only team that I spoke with that I thought from the moment we started talking, I was like, oh, these people understand what I do. If you look at the roster of Decca and Verve, it's like they do such a wide array of eclectic, amazing music that, like, for them, they were like, oh yeah, orchestras, we do that all the time. This doesn't scare us. It's great. And so I had been talking with them, and after Eleanor Rigby went viral, I kind of went back and I was like, hey, maybe there's something we can figure out here. And that's when kind of the deal talks got really serious, and we got to a place where I felt comfortable with a deal.
Cool. And can you share anything about that deal?
Yeah, I don't think I can go into like absolute specifics, but basically, obviously I was in a pretty high leverage situation. Not as high leverage as Ricky was. My streaming numbers were not as high as his, but with coming off the heels of a Grammy nom and another viral track, basically we ended up doing what's called a joint venture. So, and my kind of my thing has always been to like bet on myself. And so I wasn't taking a bunch of upfront money. I took higher percentages on the back end.
Cool.
So that was kind of my way of feeling like I was still kind of a little bit in control or something, where I was still retaining a significant percentage of what I was doing going forward. But yeah, it was super exciting and fun. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was fun. The negotiations are always so hard.
When you say joint venture, you mean it's like kind of a licensing deal? They weren't owning the masters outright, or you were licensing them the works for a certain number of years, or you both own it? And do the rights ever revert back to you, or what does that mean exactly?
So basically, there were two different deals. One of them was a licensing deal for some back catalog, and then there was a new music deal, which was a joint venture going forward. And the JV deal was more of like I think they call it a profit share agreement. So it's not a royalty-based agreement. It's kind of like we add up all the expenses and then split whatever's left based on the percentage split. And I did not, it wasn't super concerning to me to like own my masters given the percentages that I was dealing with. So they own my record to the end, and I think they will own it forever. But that doesn't bother me because I am comfortable with the deal.
So and you just need to audit them.
Of course,
make sure they're
every
paying
2
you.
years.
Good. Worth the expense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, but now you're independent, and your new music is coming out. I'm noticing completely independent, and congratulations on the Grammy nomination for Sound of Silence, the best arrangement. That's awesome. You're up against Willow, which and Pathogen that was my album of the year.
Oh, it's an amazing record. Yeah.
It's an incredible record. But Sound of Silence is an incredible arrangement, and I'm going to have a hard time deciding who I'm going to vote for. Now, you got my vote, Cody. Don't worry. You come on my show. If Willow came on the show, then maybe she'd get my vote. But my vote can be bought.
I understand.
Right. No, but so, well, first off, you mentioned, I actually want to rewind a little bit. Your first Grammy nomination, was that before you got the record deal?
Correct. Yeah.
And how
did actually, just as an aside, not to throw them under the bus, I reached out to Decca and showed them the Eleanor Rigby arrangement, and I was like, hey, would you guys be interested in partnering on this arrangement? I feel like it's something really special. And they declined, and then a few weeks later, it got nominated for a Grammy and went viral on TikTok.
Incredible. Oh, that's awesome. I love that.
It was just not the right timing for them or whatever, but it was just...
Yeah, for sure. So are you a Recording Academy member, or how did the song get nominated back then and also now?
Yes, I'm a member. I joined so that I could submit Eleanor Rigby.
Amazing. Perfect. Great.
And then simple as that. I also moved the release date forward so that it would be eligible for the coming year, and all that time I just was thinking to myself, why am I doing this? No one knows who I am, and no one's going to vote for me. But I just had this thing where I was like, you know what? It feels like with the traction I'm getting online, this is probably the best shot I have. And because it's such an esoteric category, the arrangers category, I thought, surely it probably doesn't take that many votes to like tip something over the edge. Especially, this is very in the weeds, but the arrangement category is part of like the craft categories that they call craft categories. And so they have a popular vote that narrows it down to the top 20, but then they have these committees of specialists that then vote to the top 5.
Oh,
So obviously
I
there's
didn't
like hundreds of
realize that.
submissions. The popular vote narrows it down to 20, and then like there's a committee of just like arrangers who it changes every year, I think, and then they narrow it down to the top 5. So I thought if I can just get in on to that committee, maybe I've got a chance.
Hell yeah. No, and also what I realized, because this was my first year as a voting member, as I was voting, in those initial categories, what I didn't realize is that I had to actually select the subcategories that I wanted to vote as part of. So I don't actually even think I voted in your category because I selected some other ones. I mean, everyone can vote in the popular, the biggest categories like album of the year, record of the year, etc. But when you get into these more niche categories, like you said, it was the craft category. There's like engineering, or there's like
the genre
world
categories,
music, the genre, all of that. You have to select, and you can only select, I think, 3 or something like that. And so it is a smaller pool, and only people that are kind of working within that realm that would really understand what's happening, which I kind of like how they do that. So yeah, right on.
The
Very
goal
cool.
is to get people who are knowledgeable in those areas to vote.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Cool. So anyway, so let's fast forward back to kind of now you're independent. Tell me about the transition from the record deal to now being independent.
Where to begin, Ari? It's been a wild journey, I think. And some of, I should mention at the top, some of this has nothing to do with record deals. Like I had had our first daughter in the middle of like making my first record with. It's been a crazy couple years.
Sure.
But I think kind of the thing that really kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess you would say, is when I think it was this past year. Gosh, I can't even keep time straight anymore. Like 6 months ago, when UMG decided to pull all of their music off of TikTok, I had a track that was going massively viral in China, and it had just started. I mean, we're talking like it was like on the up curve, hitting 2 million, 3 million streams a day, which is crazy. And like the amount of creations were in the millions, like hundreds of thousands being created every day. And then overnight, that just went to 0. And when you sign a record deal, you just don't picture your record company shooting themselves in the foot like that. So it was just never on my radar to like have to think about a moment like that. Of like, okay, what happens if the label pulls my music off of the platform that they signed me to be on? Like it's just it's such a strange. Yeah. And so it just caused me to start thinking about like, okay, what if I step back here and look at this? Like, what are they providing? How do I feel about being on a label? Am I happier now than I was as an indie? And that was the real question that kind of got to the heart of it for me. And kind of after all that, just had like a really frank conversation with the head of the label. I was just like, look, I just don't think I'm happy here. I feel like it's just not really working. And I think they, to their credit, were really like okay with me saying that, especially because they had already taken my option. So I was optioned for my next record and beginning to make it. So they really had no legal reason to let me out of the contract. I think that for them, they were just kind of like, look, we like you. We have no reason to keep someone in a contract that doesn't want to be here.
Did they already pay you the advance for the option?
So my record labels were not structured like that. My record deals were not structured like that.
Well,
so
that makes
I had
it a bit
I had a
easier
recording
then.
budget. Well, technically I had a small advance, I guess I should now say. But they had not paid that to me yet.
That makes a lot easier.
Yeah. But like, for example, Sound of Silence had already been recorded and they had paid for everything. And so when I left, I said, I want to buy that track. And so I bought it back from them. So because I want to include it on my next project. And honestly, they've been so fantastic through this whole process. I have nothing but good things to say about the people that I work with at Decca, truly. Wonderful, wonderful people. I think that they just exist in a system that is not necessarily built for what I do. And
Yeah. No, that's great. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And you're kind of now finding this, I don't know if it's a niche, but a lot of these, you're like touring orchestras essentially. You're going around
Yeah.
to different symphony orchestras or philharmonics and fronting them with your original music and
Yeah.
your arrangements, which is so cool. You don't, I mean, not many people do that. Like I know like Ben Folds did it for a little while, and like there's a lot of artists that will front orchestras, but not typically with their own arrangements
Right.
that they've done. And so tell me about kind of getting into that. Like I know you played the Kennedy Center, you're playing the Walt Disney
Yeah.
Music Hall next month,
Oh
which
yeah,
is
that's right. In
incredible.
January.
Congratulations in January. So exciting. Tell me about how you kind of got into that. I don't know if you want to call it a market
Yeah,
or
yeah.
scene or whatever that is. Like,
Oh,
how did you
dude,
break into that?
it's so wild. I was just reminding myself that like when I played Chicago in like 2018, I played at this horrible venue called Subterranean. No offense, Subterranean, but you're kind of the worst.
Sure.
For like 80 people. And then
Sure.
I come back to Chicago a few years later and playing with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra at the most beautiful venue in the whole city, like this gigantic 3,000 seat theater. It's just I am just shocked, like truly shocked at this turn of events. And I think, you know,
Yeah.
obviously my music really features the orchestra. So it's not
Yes.
like I have to convince orchestras that this could work. It's like they can just hear it. Like, oh yeah, that's the orchestra in your music. And so I think that really helped. But the other thing I think is that so in the orchestra world, they call them pops shows, which is just anything that's not classical.
Okay.
A lot of pop shows are kind of a bummer for the orchestra to play because usually it's like a band that comes in with electric guitars and drums and a bunch of production, and you can barely hear the orchestra, and it's super loud on stage. And the orchestra players just don't love playing them, and usually the charts are less than great.
Yeah.
And so when I come into an orchestra, my goal is to like serve up the orchestra for the audience as much as possible. I want these
Cool.
crowds to come in and hear how amazing the orchestra is.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I write things that are difficult. I write things that take some practice. I write things that showcase all the talented people in the orchestra. And I think that's kind of been my strategy. And obviously, they wouldn't have me if I couldn't sell tickets, but like they have me back because the orchestra loves playing the shows so much. So
That's so cool. Talk about that experience. Like, how much do you get to rehearse with the orchestra? Are you actually, I mean, how much are you working directly with the conductor? Are they rehearsing before you arrive? Tell me, like, step me through that experience.
it's different for every orchestra. Some
Okay.
orchestras do a rehearsal like the day before, but for me, I normally arrive the morning of the show. We run the show one time, play everything through once, and then perform that night. So
Incredible. Wow.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
every orchestra is different, but I think that's the most common thing. They're just fantastic musicians, and they get the music in advance, and when they show up, obviously they can nail it. But it's
Are
great.
they
It's like this.
rehearsing? Oh, go ahead.
It's like a touring hack, I think, because I just get to show up in this beautiful place with all these wonderful musicians, and
Right,
everybody
right.
takes care of me. And I'm not having
Man.
to get in the van and grind it out. Which I did that.
Yeah.
But I'm not in that stage of my life anymore. So I feel very
Best
lucky.
gig ever. You don't got to deal with. It's not like you're working for drink tickets and you,
Right,
you know
yeah.
like the shitty
Yeah.
green room with like a veggie platter as your rider that they're fulfilling. Like it's
Right.
yeah, that's a much nicer experience I would imagine. So yeah, and I've seen you do a few of these, like you with collaborations, like with Ben Rector, like you mentioned. I think
Oh,
that
yeah.
was the
Oh, yeah.
Kennedy Center, and Corey Wong. You did some shows with, and so when you put these together, I'm just curious, like, so it's part of their like uh, schedule or their what do they call it?
A season.
For
yeah.
the season. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, that is the term in the orchestra.
That's fair. Oh man, it's so
I'm-
different than regular touring, man.
Right. So it's part of the season. So it's like booked like what, a year in advance or something like
dude.
that? Or
Yeah, I'm booking for 2026 right now. Like,
Okay, yeah,
like
over a
end
year
of
in advance.
2026. I mean,
wild.
sometimes shows come up and they'll be like, "Oh gosh, we had a cancellation. Could you do 5 months from now or whatever?" But you're
Right.
booking this thing's a long way off.
Wow. And do you have a booking agent for like is there a
I
booking
do.
agent
Yes.
that they
I know,
specialize in this specific type
Yeah.
of
I know it was like this crazy godsend for me because I really have a very small team. Obviously, I had the label. Now I don't have the label, but
Right.
in the midst of all this wonderful agent reached out to me. Her name's Emily. She works at Wasserman, and she was kind of like, "Hey, you just got on my radar. I thought we might could work together because all I do is book orchestra stuff."
Oh, so cool.
And like,
Perfect.
Literally
Perfect fit.
in that phone conversation, I was like, "Done. Let's do it." And
Yeah,
she's been
yeah.
amazing. Yeah, she's been so
That's
great.
so cool. That's great.
So,
That's great.
yeah.
And do you have a manager?
I don't have a manager. I've never had a manager. Not that I don't want a manager. It's not like I'm being approached by managers all the time. I'm really not being
Yeah.
approached.
Yeah.
But I've not had a manager, and
That's wild to me. So you're doing all of the management. I'm
Yes.
assuming.
Yes.
That's great. Yeah, man after my own heart.
Well, I mean, dude, it's a tough
hard
calculation
as
there when you
shit.
start thinking
Yeah.
about 20% of your gross revenue or whatever. It's like, oh man,
True.
how much value does this person need to be providing if I'm going to give them that? And
Yep.
I think the hard truth for me about the music business that I've just kept learning over and over is that a lot of it is just answering incoming calls. And when you're a kid, when you're starting out, you think, oh, if I could just get a manager, if I can get a label, they can like create some traction for me or they'll get me into play Carnegie Hall. But it's like, you're not going to be playing Carnegie Hall if you can't sell Carnegie Hall.
Right.
And so,
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the thing I have to keep reminding myself is like, it's my job to create the traction. Like, I am the CEO. I am the artist. It's my job to make this happen, and everyone else is going to come alongside me and support. But I can't reasonably expect them to like create any super value for me that I'm not going to create myself.
Yep. No, absolutely. But there is definitely value in team members at the right time. I like your booking agent with Emily. I mean, clearly that has been a nice fit, and that has opened doors and probably I would imagine it was a net gain, even though they take 10%.
Yes. Oh, totally.
They're bringing in more than what you're giving up with that, and that's
Absolutely.
the goal.
Yeah.
With the record label, who knows if that was a net gain or not? But either way, it was an experience as a team member. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Right people, right time, and really the right people thing. Like, my lawyer has been with me from the beginning, and he's
Awesome.
the best. He's like a brother, and so like obviously you can't do this all on your own. But I think it's more of the mindset for me, which is like,
okay,
I don't want to be the type of person that's waiting for someone to come along to give me permission to do the thing that I could already go out and do myself, probably. And so I think like I spent a lot of time when I was, in early 20s thinking like, oh, if I could just like get this song heard by the right person, maybe it'll finally happen for me. And it's like, no, just get it on. Like, you have access to the same tools as everybody else, You and Beyonce can be on the same exact social networks, and she doesn't have any cheat codes that you don't have. It's just like,
right.
We all have the same tools, and so it's just a figuring out like, okay, how can I use those tools to like meet my goals?
Yes.
Not going to be easy, but they're all there for you.
I love that. Yeah, no, absolutely. So do you have any non-traditional team members, and who are they and what do they do?
Oh gosh.
Like anyone that would help you with your scoring or production or engineering or whatever. Anyone that's on your team that's like, oh, these are my people, but they wouldn't be written about in like Passman's book or whatever,
Totally. Oh, dude, I love this question. So for me specifically, like probably the two people most important in my life for touring, obviously besides Emily, my agent, she books all the shows, but like my music copyist, Stephen Lamb, he lives here in Nashville.
What is that?
Okay, so when I create a score, right, it's whatever, 3 flutes, 3 clarinets, 3 oboes, 3 bassoons, 4 French horns, 3 trumpets, 3 trombones, a tuba, percussion, keyboard, harp, violins, violas, cellos, contrabasses. All those people need paper charts to be printed out.
Yes.
And someone has to take the score and create individual pieces of music for each of those people. Because obviously they don't read off of the full score. So I can create the full score, but it takes hours and hours and hours to create all these individual parts for the players. And that's something that I just don't have time to do. And so for me, when I'm done with the score, I send it to Steven. He creates all those parts. He interfaces with the orchestras, makes sure they have what they need.
Incredible.
And that is like, he is... worth his weight in gold. And then
awesome.
the other team member that I have is my librarian, which is actually my dad, and he keeps track of all my paper music and interfaces with the orchestras because they have to ship. Orchestras still ship paper music to each other because it's a ton of printing, and so you can have boxes this thick full of paper charts, and so they ship them to each other. And my dad graciously keeps track of all that for me, and this piece is going on this set list and that needs to be sent over here and all that. So those are two people that are definitely non-traditional, but for me specifically, I could not live without.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. And I love that your dad is part of your operation.
It's amazing.
And, yeah.
I feel so
and he's
lucky,
got the
man.
expertise.
I
Yeah,
know, truly, the absolute
Mhm.
expertise.
Right. So cool. And I love that that job is called a librarian. That's fantastic.
Yes.
A copyist and a librarian. Those are very non-traditional team members that
you don't read about
definitely
those
wouldn't be written about in any of those. And I'm actually going to add those two jobs into my next edition of the book because I have like 101 jobs in the music industry other than recording artists. And I don't think those two are in there. So we're going to have 103 jobs
I love
as
that.
the next edition. That's cool. So yeah, speaking of your sheet music, I want to talk about, I see that you sell your sheet music on your website. Talk about that process. Is that independent? I think I saw you go through a third party that helps you sell that, or tell me about that business model and how all that works.
Yes, I do not have a publishing deal. I've never had a publishing deal. Well, I guess I should clarify. This is a music business podcast. I administer my entire domestic publishing myself. I do have a foreign administration through a company called Blue Water in town, and they do a great job of collecting all the foreign royalties that are hard for me to get my mitts on. But
that's fascinating to me. So you're a member of, you go direct. You're like a member of the MLC. You have your PRO. And then you engage Blue Water, which this is interesting. And then you just say to Blue Water, carve out the U.S. I'm doing the U.S. You do everything else. That's
so I basically,
a way to do it.
I am the guy who uploads all my stuff to ASCAP and the MLC and whatever other Harry Fox it used to be. I guess they still collect a little bit. So I take care of that. I don't think it's super difficult. I'm not releasing so much music every year that it's this impossible task. And then Blue Water is like, for example, all that stuff in China that happened, they'll go and figure that out for me. I have no idea how to collect publishing in China. So
right.
It's nice
Most people don't.
Right, exactly. So
yeah,
and that's been super helpful. But in terms of sheet music, I own all my own sheet music, and so I just put it out on my website and sell it from there. You mentioned the third party; those are for covers. So for the Beatles tune and for the Paul Simon tune or the Simon and Garfunkel tune, if I could get a license to sell it on my own website, that would be my preferred way. But as of right now, everything has to be done through this portal called Arrange Me, which is, it's very easy to use, but basically it gives you an automatic license to distribute digital sheet music. The bummer with that is that the original copyright holder takes, I want to get these numbers right. I'll double check them for you after we film this. But the original copyright holder takes 50% of the revenue. The store, Arrange Me, takes 40%. And then you get 10%.
Fuck off. 40%
insane.
for just holding on the store?
Dude,
oh, that's bullshit.
Being an arranger is not a great way to make a living in the current environment. Yeah,
There's got to be another. Is it the publisher that is gatekeeping this? They must have exclusive deals then, because that is wild to me.
Yeah,
I feel like they would go out of business.
It's a tough one because, for example, when I printed I have a Symphony Sessions score compendium that includes Eleanor Rigby, and for printing it out physically, I just went and got a license from. I think Sony administers Eleanor Rigby, and so I got a license to print 300 books, and I paid them like a couple $100 or something for the license. It was great. It's the digital stuff that is this kind of like Wild West still of like publishing, and so there's really no way to get a proper digital license that I can find through any means. If any of your listeners have a way to do it, I would love to know.
Well, here's a creative, kind of annoying way to go about it, but you could theoretically do this. If you can print it off, and you're making a lot more, and it's not bad of a license. I don't know if that's they're probably not giving you the ability to sell those physical sheets of paper. I would imagine it's not a commercial license. It's probably just for you to use and hire your orchestra and hand out to the orchestra. Because saying you can theoretically sell those as like merch items and have a store as a fulfillment store, just like you order vinyl, you send the vinyl to the fulfillment office, and then you could buy the sheet music, send the sheet music to the fulfillment office, and now that fulfillment store, third-party retailer is actually who is selling it and fulfilling it, and they'll either take like a tiny percentage, like 3% or something, not 40%. That's absurd. 5% maybe. Or they just pay them like a flat fee or something like that. So that might be an option. I don't know what the licenses that you get for the physical sheets that you print off. It's commercially available or what, but I don't know.
It's a weird one. I like that. I'll look into that. I'm sure someone would have a lawsuit about that, but
right.
Yeah, it's a weird thing.
But anyway,
it's such a strange thing because I don't. Okay, there's also this weird thing where like if you want to arrange something, you have to get permission to arrange from the original copyright holders. But if I record something first, like I recorded my version of Sound of Silence, I don't need permission to then take that arrangement and put it on paper to be performed. So it's like if I did the arrangement first without recording it, I would have to pay an arranging fee or get permission from the publisher. If I record it myself, I don't need that same permission. It's very strange.
That is really strange because I would imagine both are considered derivative works, but you're saying essentially that if you record it first, you can just classify that as a cover?
Yes. I don't know the exact
I know this is a question for your lawyer, but
but I've been told that that's kind of how it is, which is like
that's interesting. I don't know. I mean, I would imagine, and that's I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you about that because I would imagine that all of your arrangements you would have to get permission because they are so different. They would be considered derivative works and not covers. And for any technical derivative work, that's the legal copyrightable term. You do need the permission. You could then register that as a new copyright as a derivative work. And there's all these different rights and you share in with the publisher and all of that. Whereas a cover, anyone can record a cover, pop it up. You don't need permission. You just, that is just legally available to anyone once a song is publicly released.
Right.
So that's fascinating to me. Maybe, and it's just, I mean, honestly, it really just comes down to, is this going to get tested by the law? Is someone going to bring a lawsuit? And then what does the judge say? Because nobody really knows, like, what is the difference between a cover and a derivative work? It's not a math equation. Like it's not something where it's like, strange. I can, scientifically figure this one out. It's like, there's 12 notes that are the same. And so then there's 37 notes that are different. So there's, because of the 60%, blah, 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 there's none of that. That doesn't exist. And so it's probably just like, will this get tested by the law? And you're safer if you record it first because we can call this a cover versus making sheet music out of it first.
Right.
And then that's clearly, been tested as more of a derivative arrangement rather is really what it would be.
Dude, I mean, it's all so weird. But I think that sheet music is one of those things that a lot of artists don't necessarily think about that maybe they should, because it is another one of those like downloading a digital PDF costs the artist $0 to create. But if you sell them for, whatever, $5, $6, I mean, how many streams is that equivalent? It's like, if you can get somebody to, and you're not creating a physical vinyl, it's like you can just get $5 or $6 out of someone and, and how many times would they have had to stream that song in order to get the same amount of money?
100%. And it's a great point. And there are some artists that do this. Like I was chatting with, I don't know if you're familiar with Youngblood Brass Band. They're a brass band originally out of Madison, Wisconsin, where I'm from. And, they have like high school bands tend to play one of their songs, and it's an original song that they made. And so like high school, wind ensembles essentially, and marching bands. They're big in like the collegiate marching band circuit. They sell a boatload of sheet music to marching bands, to high school wind ensembles, all of that kind of stuff. Similarly, and because it's original arrangement and stuff like that, they're making a ton more on sheet
Yeah.
music than they are on streams.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I think it
Yeah.
can be great.
Yeah. What are some other alternative revenue streams, I guess, as what your whole business model is? We have sheet music. Obviously, your live appearances. I don't know if we call these tours, but like your performances. And then, Shure streams, which are solid. But is there anything else that's kind of part of your business that might be a little bit outside the box?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Obviously coming up on the end of the year here, I always do a year-end report and organize everything by category so I can see but I can already tell that what's so strange about this is like the year 2023, it was like touring was maybe 5%, 8% of my income, and I think it'll be over 50% this year. It's like with the help of Emily and with the orchestra stuff kind of finally coming to fruition, that has really exploded in terms of revenue for me, which is great. I think, what else? Non-traditional. Well, I feel like something that is part of my music business story that probably people are not aware of is the music bed. I don't know if you're familiar with the music bed.
It's like a sync licensing agency / library.
Yeah.
But yeah, talk to me about your experience with the music bed. We actually had them on the show.
Okay, yeah. They're great. And I signed up with them a long, long time ago. And the music bed was such a great thing for me, especially starting out. It wasn't like crazy money, but some months it'd be like $1,500, which when your streams are not doing that, it's like so helpful to have that little bit of extra to kind of keep things afloat. And like I think MusicBed still, in fact, I do carve outs with all my deals now to be like everything has to be able to also go through MusicBed, because I just feel like in the world of sync, it's just so weird. At my time at Universal, they never brought a single sync license for me. Not one.
And you know why? I mean, I would imagine the biggest reason for that is because they demand the high, like they won't license anything for less than like $50,000. And so they will turn away. Maybe 100 minimum. I don't know what their minimum threshold is, but it's way higher than what you, like any indie artist, would love to license something for.
Dude, I'll tell you a story, and this was kind of the encapsulation of my whole experience. So MusicBed still had my music listed, and they said, we'll pass things through to you. If someone comes to us and wants a song, we'll let them know that you're on UMG and they can work it out. So MusicBed brought in a Subaru national ad campaign. And they said, okay, they want your song Pictures of Mountains as an instrumental. And I believe their opening offer was like $25,000 or something. And in my head, I was like, okay, went to UMG. I can't remember what they countered with, but it was like $150,000 or something. Mm-hmm. And I had this conversation with UMG. I was like, okay, here's the deal. They're not coming to that song for me, Cody Fry. That is Pictures of Mountains without the vocal, because they were just licensing the instrumental. Pictures of Mountains without the vocal is just a nice piece of piano strings music. They're not using like my branding as a part of the campaign. So basically, they just found a piece of piano music they liked, and they're willing to pay 5 figures to license it. That money is going to go to someone. I would like it to go to me. And UMG was just like, we don't move. Like the lowest, I think they like ended up coming down to like $75,000 or $80,000, and Subaru just like walked away. And I was just like, man, that is so silly to me, because you're just giving up free money. Like, someone's going to get that money. I want it to be me, especially if it wasn't like, okay, and the ad campaign is called Pictures of Mountains, and Subaru is like using it's just like, okay, this is just like a random piano license. And that's the kind of stuff MusicBed is so great at bringing in. And that's the stuff that UMG and large record labels generally are just so good at not getting, because they just ask too much.
Right. Well, for them, it's just because there are so many people that are part of this operation at the majors and all of that. It's just like, it's not worth it to them to do anything less than 75, 80,000 or anything like that. But it's a bummer for artists, because it's like, I mean, it's like, fine, if you're not going to accept, this sync, then get me another sync for 100,000 or whatever. If that's really what you can command. but
that was
right,
that
it's
was
kind
my
of
whole
annoying.
thing too. I was like, okay, I'm willing to give this a try, but like, here's my revenue from Music Bed. If you guys can't match this, then what are we
Yep.
doing?
What are we doing here? Exactly. Right on. Cool. I briefly want to touch on because I love these score videos that you've put together. And I know you've been doing these for quite some time. And for those listening or watching that don't know about this, just search Cody Fry score video, and it's cool. And the whole video is just the score on a table, and you flipping through the scores. We listen to the song, but you have little tidbits in there on printed sheets of paper, kind of like a VH1 pop-up video, which I love, and you kind of giving like little
Right, yeah, pop-up
little
video. That's the exact right reference.
nice, yeah. Well, I learned a lot. It was fantastic. But it's I'm curious. Well, because you give some insights into it and all of that. And I mean, one of these videos I think is for Eleanor Rigby, has almost like 10 million views on YouTube and stuff like that. And it's like they've really caught when you kind of are thinking about your audience, because this to me rang so true. I was like, wow, Cody knows exactly who his audience is, and they gotta be like band geeks, like the people that would appreciate this type of like
people.
choir nerds or or whatever. Like,
exactly.
Because I was fascinated by this. I'm like, oh my god. I'm like looking, but and I'm a band geek, choir, whatever. And it's just like, was like, tell me about the process of that, because you've been continuing this series now for a long time.
Yeah.
And just tell me about that series a little bit, but also your audience and just kind of like how you think about the content that you put together, knowing who your audience is.
Yeah. Well, the score videos began during flying, the record flying, that cycle. Because as an indie content creator, like the holy grail is like, okay, what's something that I can do that's really cheap, easy to create, and compelling to watch? Like that's it. And so for me, like a score video, it's just all you got to do is print out the score, take some time to like make it look nice and create some little insights, and it just creates a more compelling video than like, here are the lyrics.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And so that's kind of why it began initially, is because I was like, this is something that's easy to do and fun to watch. And so I've always continued it because I think, well, let me put it this way. I'm definitely a believer in you get the fans you cultivate. And so for me, like, I want to cultivate the people that are into looking at scores. Like those are the people that I like to be around, and those are the people that are probably going to be into the music that I like and into my music as well. And so like, I just keep thinking like, okay, how can I create stuff for these, like you said, band kids, musical theater kids even, choir people, music majors, music teachers. Like, how can I create stuff that excites them like it would have excited me when I was in their shoes? I mean, I still am in their shoes in many ways, but like when I was when I was in jazz band in high school, like what kind of content would have excited me? And so, I don't know. Cool. I try to like cultivate that audience because those are the people I like.
Yeah, no, that's great. Have you noticed, like, as you've grown your audience and settled into kind of yourself as an artist, and now settling into your sound and your direction, and now doing so many of these performances fronting orchestras, has your audience evolved or shifted, or have the demographics changed, or was this audience always there from day one and it's just now expanded?
No, I think it definitely shifted. When I Hear a Symphony kind of became like the flagship song for me, that opened me up to this entire kind of thing. I think there were definitely like inklings of it, but I think for the most part, my audience was more of the like college kid generally, like with Go and music that's sort of just like fun to play loud in your car as you're driving around with your friends. Like that was sort of like my general demographic. And a lot of that came from touring with Ben Rector. It was kind of like I was borrowing from his demographic a lot of the time. And it wasn't until I Hear a Symphony that my audience really shifted. And I was able to kind of find that niche, like you said, like this is kind of who my people are, and felt that shift pretty dramatically.
Cool.
Yeah.
So where does it go from here? What is 2025 going to bring for Cody Fry?
Good question. Man, it's a weird thing. Like I I'm not trying to be like falsely humble or anything, but it's just like I've achieved more than I ever really thought realistically that I would. And
Yeah.
that's so amazing. But it also comes with this side effect of just like, what do I even do now? Like,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I've already like outshot my dreams. And so do I just like
Amazing.
keep doing that? I don't just like keep this thing going, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been hard to kind of figure out like, okay, what's the next thing that's going to excite me? But
Mm.
I think kind of 2025 will bring lots of new music. I'm going to go back and do another record like symphony sessions. So we're going to film the whole thing live with orchestra. It'll be even bigger and better than ever.
Cool.
And that was another thing that was really difficult to do on a label that I was lamenting while I was on a label. Was kind of like that sort of like filmed live with the orchestra, particularly in the US, with like the people that I've always worked with here in Nashville. That was really hard to do on a label because of AFM stuff makes it just unbelievably
The
expensive.
union.
Uh,
Yep.
and so now that I can like do that stuff again, that's really exciting to me.
That's
I'm
awesome.
going to work on
That's
a little
great.
bit of Christmas music. I've got Christmas
Yeah.
shows next year and all that stuff. So I think like,
Cool.
uh, yeah, I have a secret project I'm working on that I can't tell anyone about.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm honestly, man, you're catching me at a funny time because I've just been thinking over the last year, honestly, of like, okay, what do I
now?
do next? What do I want to do
Yeah.
next? I don't really know if that's the honest answer. So
All right. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that's, it can be daunting, but it's also exciting. It can be something, there's a lot of possibilities, and but you've already established yourself. You built something very incredible.
Yeah.
It's been very cool to watch, and you've
Yeah.
really carved out a niche that is unique to you. And what's
Yeah.
so cool is that you have now landed in a spot where you are one of one. You kind of command this part of the industry that only you can do. And that's really cool. It's not puffing you up as a bunch, but it's like that is the goal, is to be an artist that is one of one, and every artist wants to be that, but so many artists are thrown into the camp of like, oh, they're part of the new indie folk revival, or they're part of this thing, or they're just the general hip hop artist, or whatever. But it's like when you kind of have this place that you've established, and you've created essentially kind of this genre and this new side of what you're doing. And sure, there are artists that have tapped in and done orchestras and done that, but like,
Right.
using all of your skill sets. And that's the goal, is to just like, everybody has their strengths, their weaknesses, and just to be able to use your creative strengths to kind of create that career. You've really done an incredible job.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Because this is something I've been thinking about as I was
Sure.
like prepping for this podcast, which is something I've been thinking about a lot, which is like, where do you see the biggest value adds on the business side of the music business? Because obviously I am an artist, so I approach things from the artist side, and I can list tons and tons of artists that are just like real value creators. And I'm curious to kind of hear your thought on like, what do you think is a bit of BS, and what do you think is like, hey, this is like a really helpful for an artist that's either starting out or looking to expand a team or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I would say the right manager, honestly, can be a tremendous value add, more so than a booking agent. I mean, a booking agent, absolutely nuts and bolts, gets you paid, very, very important job, does all of the minutia of all the booking stuff that is just annoying to do. And they have the connections and all of that. But, the right creative manager, and it's got to be the right fit, because there are a lot of wrong managers out there. I mean, my God, I have heard so many horror stories about bad managers, wrong managers. And so that's like, got to be extremely careful when it comes to that. But the right manager, it is your partner in crime. It is someone who like you understands your business so much, and is this like, oh, you don't know what to do? Well, what if we did this? Or what do you, it's like somebody to
yeah.
spitball with. It's just like another creative mind that is deeply invested, both, of course, financially and business wise, but emotionally and creatively, and like gets it. Like it's really that partner in crime that can do it. And I've seen, what great managers can do for artists. It's almost like what a producer does in the studio is
Yeah,
what
that's
a
a great
manager can
analogy.
do.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
artists. And so,
Yeah, man, that would be so great. Let
yeah.
me ask you
And
this though. I've been
sure.
seeing a trend on the financial side of it where
Yeah.
artists are moving more towards a pay for service model with
Yep.
management rather than a percentage of revenue model.
Yep.
Have you heard much about that, or what's your take on like the current state of management finance?
It's interesting because I've seen it on both ends of the spectrum. So I've seen it, the headlines were when Bruno Mars fired his manager and hired just a staff or something like that.
Right,
Or
yeah.
like Beyonce fired her management team and like Jay-Z was taken over, or like it's just a staff of people that you can just hire to do all that. Because especially when you're at the superstar level, like why you get up 15 to 20% when like you could literally just like hire somebody at a really, really great salary level, give them
Yeah.
6 figures and do the job. And they're going to, just like anyone at a company would do the job, and you're paying them well. And so I see it at the superstar level. I see it at the emerging level. Absolutely. When artists like don't make enough to where 20% of what they make is not livable for any manager, and it's not even like worth it, honestly, for any
Right.
manager.
Totally. Yeah.
But the manager might believe in them, but the manager can't work for free. And so it's kind of like, then I also see them put them on salary too. So maybe they have a day job where they're making a lot of money from their day job, and they can afford to hire a manager to help them out, or just hire a team member, hire them something.
Yeah.
It's similarly like bringing somebody onto your staff, or maybe they, have money from something, whatever. And then everywhere in the middle is where we're seeing like the traditional model of a manager kind of hold true for the most part, because that
Interesting.
15
Okay.
to 20%, it kind of makes sense in a way, because everyone is incentivized in that way. Whereas, like, sure, if you're working at a big company, you get end of year bonuses. And I'm sure the superstars are giving their, management staff end of year bonuses, like it would be a commission, but probably, well, definitely not up to that 20% of what it would be if they were paying them by commission.
Yeah.
But there are big management companies, and by and large, most management companies are working on this commission model of a 15 to 20%. So if you sign with a big management company, there typically isn't much wiggle room when it comes to that, even though you're really just signing with an individual. You're signing with a manager who like gets you, and that's your person. If they're working under that umbrella, they kind of have to stay true to that. But that being said, like, we are in the Wild West. Like, the music industry is the Wild, Wild West.
Yeah.
There are no rules. Like, every deal I've seen and heard about under the sun, in every vertical of our industry. And so it's like, it hasn't been done that way until it has. And that is kind of what has always been the way, and what is continually now, I would say, 100-fold, just in just the crazy times that we're in right now. So,
Yeah.
Everything is always on the table when it comes to that.
Yeah. Man,
But yeah.
that's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Do you have another minute? I have another question.
Of course,
for you.
yeah, man. Let's turn the mic.
I just like I love your podcast. I love your podcast so much. You seem like you just have had so many great conversations with people that like you just seem like to have such knowledge of a lot of these things.
Sure. Hey, I'm happy to.
Obviously, leaving a major record deal was like a big decision for me, and I've been thinking about it a lot, and just trying to kind of wrap my mind around like who I think record deals are for. Like, who do they work for? Who do they not work for? Because I think when I'm looking back at myself, I see that maybe I'm just not a great candidate for a record deal in a lot of ways. My gut, and maybe you can correct me here or something. My gut is that like a lot of record labels and music business people in general are built around like pre-existing lanes. Like for example, I think if you're a country artist, it's going to be really tough to do this without a label because the labels have so many like greased avenues that they can just say like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we just put you on this lane and like there you go. They're just built to kind of like launch that thing.
Yeah.
I think like Christian music is a similar thing where it's like you got to be on Christian radio, you got to like do those things. And I think even as social media has broken down a lot of that, there's still like are certain genres where there are like existing lanes that people are just so ready to send you down.
Yeah.
I thought for an artist like me that's not really in an existing lane that any of these labels really do, or if there is an existing lane, there's just not enough money in it to like make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
And so I've just been thinking about that. Like, who do you think should sign a record deal in 2024?
Yeah, or 2025 as
Yeah,
is the case now as we're moving forward.
Right.
No, that's an excellent question, and it is something that here's the thing. It's not an easy answer because there are so many different types of record labels, and that's
yes.
what there's a major distinction between major record labels and independent labels. It's hard to even put them in the same category as record label. And so like I've had quite a few indie labels on the show, most recently Sub Pop Records and Partisan Records and Coal Mine Records, and indie labels are kind of fellow teammates. Most of those deals are like 50-50 licensing. We're just like in it together. We're both pulling our weight. It's they're not going to hold you for long periods of time if you don't want to be there, whatever. And there's not shareholders they have to answer to. They're not like, manipulating the books and the numbers, and like there's no massive recoupment numbers, all of that. It's such a different business model. And but they similarly, depending on the size, have the infrastructure and have their lane cornered with whatever type of music they're doing. We just had Empire Records on, Heather Vassar, when they had the number one hit song in the world. They have a bar song, Tipsy with Shabuzi. They put that out, and that's an independent label. So a bar song, believe it or not, was put out by an indie label, but they like you said, they've greased those lanes. They have that infrastructure. It's really about what are the goals of the artist and what kind of career does the artist want to have? And can they get there on their own, maybe just with the staff, maybe just internally by managing their business on their own? Or would it be helpful to engage a larger entity to reach those goals? Because these days there are label services companies out there. I mean, the difference between what a record company is versus what a distributor is, those lines are becoming so blurred right now.
Yeah.
It's like you have these, historical distributors like that are bigger, kind of like with like the Orchard or STEM or AWOL or even like the Create Music Group or Symphonic, and they have these like tiers, and some of them are doing major, like pretty much everything that a record company would do and have all the infrastructure. And then you have on the other end of the spectrum, you have like your distro kids and TuneCores and CD Babies that are just serving a function, just get you to A to B, pay them some money, boom, get them to A to B, no services, no additional features, whatever. And so it's like, okay, I know that's a distributor. And then you like look over in the other end of the spectrum, like you experienced, that's a major record deal. But then everything in between, there are so many different scenarios. And it's just like, so it's kind of like, what are you looking to achieve? What are the goals? And then you can find a company out there that aligns with that vision. It might not be a traditional record label, probably not a major, because they are pretty cookie cutter in how they operate. And they have their vision, and vision, if you don't align with their vision, then they're not interested, even though they might say they are, they're not. And then it's like, but with indie labels or label services companies or distributors or whatever, there's just everything under the sun right now. I'm even seeing marketing agencies that are putting out records and taking commission. It's just like a weird thing because they've like really mastered the art of marketing new releases, and it's a completely different deal structure. I mean, I was talking to these like marketing agencies where it's like, oh yeah, we've got this down. We know how to run the ads. We know how to do the organic socials and da-da-da-da-da. And like, we're going to pop this out and we take, 15% or something, and we run all the ads, and we know this, and we know that this works because we've now can do this.
Right.
They're
Oh,
not
that's so
owning
interesting.
anything.
Wow.
It's not an artist. It's per song. It's
Yeah.
like, it's not, they don't even think in artist terms anymore because of how streaming functions. So it's just like a wild world right now that we're in.
Dude.
And there's no like clear path.
I love it so much. Like, I love the music business right now. I feel like even if you could like drop me in like the heyday of the 80s or whatever, like I still think it's more fun to be in the music business right now. And I think as an artist specifically, because like there's no one that can tell you can't do it. Like there's no there's nobody who can say like, oh, like imagine me bringing I Hear a Symphony to a major record label and being like, this song is going to be massive. Like,
right.
I'm bringing you a platinum record. Like, I would have been laughed out of every room. And I feel like
Absolutely.
there's so much interesting music happening right now because people can just do it. They can just do it. And there's so and like what you're saying about that like mid-tier of the music business is so interesting because there's so many different pathways. And it allows, I think, like the artist or the music to like find the way that it needs to find in order to figure it out. I just think that's so valuable and cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love where we are.
That's great. I love it too. Well, Cody, this has been great, and we could wrap for the next few hours.
Dude, I know.
Yeah, but I want to I want to ask you my final question that I ask everyone who comes on the show, and that is, what does it mean to you to make it in the new music business?
I thought about this question a lot because I saw it on your prep sheet. I think to me, it's always just been like, I'm making it if I'm able to cover my expenses while doing music. Like that to me is the dream. I am able to do this as a job. Everything beyond that is kind of just like bonus to me. I won't lie to you. It's wonderful to be beyond that. But like, even 10 years ago when I was just like, I was doing all right, but it wasn't like, here, we're taking private jets or something. Not that I'm doing that now. But I just think being able to cover your bills however you need to while being able to just do music, that is it.
Love it.
And I think there's
Cody
never
Fry.
been a better time to do it than right now.
Amen. Cody, thank you so much. That's great.
My pleasure.
Today's episode was edited by Ari Davids with music by Brassroots District and produced by all the great people at Ari's Take.